Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria QK.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. Let's get started with the story of the day.
We have an update about Luigi Mangione, who is the 26-year-old that killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. So, of course, there's been a lot of controversy because people are really in support of him killing this guy. And now there has been this fundraiser online to raise money for his legal defense. And it's over $300,000 right now.
So I guess that there's a committee that has put forth this GoFundMe type of page to collect this money for him. It's actually weird that that's legally allowed. Do they do that for other criminals too? That you could have a fund that people are supporting online while you're in jail?
Well, I guess it depends on what platform this is, because I personally don't think GoFundMe would allow this. This is on a website called Give, Send, Go.
It's the same theory.
It's the same thing, but I guess it just depends on whatever company wants to allow what they're gonna do. I also would think this isn't allowed. I'd also think it wouldn't be legal for the lawyer to accept this money, but apparently that's what's happening. So I'm curious how this is gonna go down.
I think it's weird that people are so willing to fight for this cause and give money for it because this guy actually has his own money.
Yeah, that is a good point you bring up. I didn't really think about that before, that he came from this really wealthy family, but
like multi-millionaires. So that's, if you're a person that is against the system and you believe in this healthcare is totally taking advantage of people and responsible for people's death and everything, then you would think that you would also, they're all for profit, this and that. Well, this guy is from a lot of money too. He doesn't seem at this point that he was even directly affected by any of this. So it's not like, I don't know. Do you think that you'd have a little bit more sympathy if it was like a 45-year-old dad who lost his kid to cancer because the kid couldn't get cancer and he was like a mechanic or something? You'd have almost a little bit more passion to be like, I understand why this guy did this. But in this case, he just was doing it as a statement rather than because it was directly affecting him. And in my personal opinion, you could justify 95% of the murders that happen in this country if you really wanted to say, oh, that person did something shitty and deserved to die. And we can't live in a society like that, or else it's going to be okay to kill whoever we want that we don't think is doing the right thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I am curious how they are going to find a jury that's 100% non-biased towards the healthcare system, because it is obviously very flawed. It doesn't make it justified why he killed this guy. And of course, the main argument is like, well, this CEO killed way more people by his fucked up policies than Luigi did by killing him. And I understand all of that, but we can't be taking the law in our hands.
You could literally say that about every single politician that's ever existed and the people involved with COVID, for example, and all of this stuff. It's just like, yeah, all of these people totally suck, but we can't have citizens going out and handling it like this, because once you say that this is okay, then there's going to be someone next. And I think that it's definitely worth having the conversation that this affects people. Literally this morning, Maria is having problems having coverage with healthcare and having to pay $900 every single time she needs to get some test done and shit. Like, it affects everyone. Everyone.
Well, that's why
something
I think
about it.
This case is going to be problematic when it goes to trial, because he's pleaded not guilty. So it's going to go forward to trial. But I think really, with healthcare in particular, it is something every single American has an issue with, give or take. So I find it's going to be incredibly hard to find a jury that has not been personally affected in some sort of way.
I would just go as far to say, though, if you're going to blame the healthcare insurance companies, they're private companies and they're trying to make money, so they're going to do whatever they can. don't you feel like it would be a step above that the government is really the one that's in charge of all of those rules and regulations and what they're allowed to do and so forth? So it's not just like you got rid of the bad guy and now it's the end of the story. Like literally this guy got killed months ago and we're still having problems this morning getting coverage for shit. It didn't help anything. It didn't make anything go away. It didn't change anything. So whatever. I think the most impressive part of this story, to be honest with you, is that this wasn't like a couple donors had, with a lot of money gave him money. There was 10,000 individual donors and their average donation was only $30. And 10,000 people is a ton of people.
Yeah, of course it is. And when you go through, I don't know if you went on the actual website, but I was looking through it and everybody has a message of support for him that's donated, obviously. And people aren't even doing it anonymously. They're happy to put their name on the donation.
Yeah, it's a very interesting case, and I am very excited to see the trial of it and what the average person thinks about it, because I don't agree with just murdering people that you think are doing the wrong thing, because that's why we have the justice system. And listen, like, I know the justice system totally sucks too, but there has to be some kind of laws and regulations, otherwise like shit's gonna hit the fan and be terrible. So that's why I'm in general just not for this, although I completely agree that it's a terrible situation we're in here anyway.
Yeah, and I think a couple other interesting points about this case, because I don't think we've talked about it in a while, is he's in the same jail right now as Diddy, and his defense attorney is married to Diddy's defense attorney. So I think that's really interesting dynamic. He's also in jail with Sam Bankman-Fried, who was the FTX founder that got sued recently. So I think it's interesting thinking of all these different people in prison, and it makes me think of how the Menendez brothers and OJ crossed over temporarily, and they said they did interact, and it's just
we're going to talk about
interesting.
the Menendez brothers a little bit later in this episode, but let's get into celebrity news and start with the big story of the week, which was the Super Bowl, which you had a party. We went over. It was nice. I mean, I don't like football, but it was a nice evening.
Well, let me just say, we were only like, okay, we're going to have two friends and then my father-in-law over, and then I obviously want you guys here, but my husband's like a psycho and superstitious, and he was just like, I guess the last Super Bowl you left after the third quarter, and then he blamed you for why they left or for why they lost that year. So,
which
he
is
was
ridiculous. Well, listen, no, 2 years ago, my children were like 8 and 9 years old. So at 9:00 at night on a Sunday night when they have school the next day, I had to leave to put them to bed. I don't think it's unreasonable that I left in the middle of the game, but I understand. So and it was fine because I thought the game was entertaining. There was a lot of watching the show, eating food, everything. So it was good. We didn't have a problem. We didn't get home till almost 11 o'clock though.
Yeah, you were allowed to come, but you weren't allowed to leave, and you definitely couldn't be late. So my one friend, Sam, made it right at the last second, because I was going to be like, you can't come in otherwise, because he was being crazy about it. But the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Anyway, leading up to it, there's I guess the players get there about a week or probably 10 days early to start getting acclimated and practice and everything. But reporters are also there all week doing media coverage for it. And this one Kansas City sports reporter, his name's Adon Manzano, he was in New Orleans reporting on the Super Bowl last week and tragically died. It wasn't really obvious what happened to him at first, but then weird details started coming out that there was surveillance of this woman going in his hotel room, and she came out alone, and then he was found dead shortly after that. And apparently she has a history of doing these really shady things with men and drugs and stealing their, phones, their credit cards. And I guess this one just went a little too far and he died.
So it seems like this guy already has this terrible tragedy that happened to him, was that less than a year ago, his wife died in a car accident and they had a baby together that's only 2 years old. So I guess I don't know what the deal is with this woman. Is she like a sex worker? Was she his girlfriend? They don't really say what her involvement was, but there's definitely video footage of them together in this hotel. And ever since she's been named as being involved with this story, all of these people are coming out of the woodwork now saying that she tried to do a similar thing to them, which is crazy.
Yeah, so it seems like they're obviously, still doing an investigation and pending toxicology because that typically takes a couple weeks to come back, right?
Yeah, that I mean, it just depends what medical examiner's office is doing it and where they're sending the testing out to, but yeah, that could take a little while to come back. And you know what? Honestly, it's possible they do a quick tox at autopsy, which is they take urine directly out of the bladder and they check for the major drugs like opioids and cocaine, and there's a couple they could do. So they might already know that it was positive, but I don't believe I personally think, because of what you're hearing from the other stories, that it seems as if this woman is slipping something in someone's drink. I would say that it's probably a drug like roofies or Rohypnol that it's a benzodiazepine similar to Xanax. It's in that group of drugs, but when you give it to someone, it dissolves in a drink, number one, and number two, it could make them, with all the other symptoms that come with being on a Xanax type drug, it also comes with amnesia, meaning that the person could take it and doesn't even know that they don't remember the entire night, which is why it's often referred to as the date rape drug, because it kind of erases people's memory in a way.
Yeah, it is weird that, all these stories are coming out and you have to be thinking like, well, if this is known information and people were so easily to connect their cases to her, why is she not in jail? It seems like she was convicted in October of computer fraud and theft. And then she was supposed to be sentenced behind bars, but then the judge instead ordered her to pay restitution and be on probation for 5 years. And then she obviously just keeps going out and doing the same thing. So when they saw her on the surveillance video and then they find this guy dead, they go to her house to question her about it. And then they find his cell phone and his credit cards, which obviously seems extremely suspicious. And then, of course, we know all these other men are coming forward saying she did the same thing to them and stole all their information. But it doesn't seem like she actually killed anybody else. And I guess she still allegedly may have killed this guy, but it's not looking really good for her. So,
well, this is the thing too. A lot of people get this date rape drug. It happened to one of my friends when we were in Las Vegas, believe it or not, that she had something like this slipped in her drink. It was crazy. But it's a drug, right? So if this guy was on any kind of other medications or if he was drinking alcohol, it's a central nervous system depressant. So it could turn off the respiratory centers in your brain and it could kill you. So that, and the dosage and everything, you don't know what a person can handle or not. So they'll be able to tell that when they do the toxicology. Like I was saying earlier, the quick toxicology wouldn't routinely look for a drug like this. So they're going to have to do a more further in-depth one to check to see if there was any kind of other illegal drugs in his system that could have been slipped in a drink like that.
Yeah. All right, this next case, Christy Carlson Romano. She is an actress most famous for being in Even Stevens, and she is the voice of Kim Possible. Those were kind of shows when I was around the girls' age.
You know who this
really
person
big.
is?
I know the voice of Kim Possible because me and Dee used to watch that show all the time. Yeah.
Okay.
So I didn't recognize her face like right when we started reading the article, but I definitely know who she is now that I know. But her and her husband were out celebrating for his birthday and they were shooting clay pigeons, and suddenly in the middle of this she gets shot in the eye, and it seems that this other group that was where they were celebrating shot in the wrong direction and struck her.
So typically if you do clay pigeon, do you know what that is?
Yeah, I do, and I called Louis to see what gun you would use for that, and he said you would most often shoot with a shotgun.
Yeah, so for those of you listening that don't really understand what it is, it's these clay saucers. They're usually made of a mixture of pulverized limestone rock or something, but they're almost shaped like a really shallow bowl. And they're shot up into the air with this machine that it kind of mimics what it would be like if you were actually trying to shoot a bird. And people do it as a sport, and people also do it as a hobby. So if you're going to a place to do this, like some sort of shooting range that has the ability to shoot clay pigeons, it's usually safe because there's all these regulations as far as where people need to stand and just how to make the environment more safe, especially when you have multiple people shooting at one time. But a lot of people, especially people that have really large properties and stuff, they do it in their backyard or something. And then that's when you could have problems with these things. So not only just shooting at the clay pigeon could cause the clay pigeon to shatter and the pieces can hurt you, but also there could be problems with people not shooting in the right direction, like in this case. And you could also have the ammunition ricocheting off of something, which is more than likely what happened in her case. But you can get serious, either one of those things though would cause serious eye injuries. So it makes sense that you should definitely be wearing eye protection when you're doing something like this. I'm assuming she wasn't, just because of where the pellet looks like it hit her face. She has a black eye and a very specific shot of where it hit her.
I was thinking about that though because it's in kind of a weird spot on her cheek. So I was thinking of, like, I'm looking at your glasses right now, for example, right? And the edge of your glasses goes to approximately the area where it looks like it hit her cheek. But sometimes safety goggles, I don't think, go down that far on your face.
Well, it depends what kind you wear. And even with wearing glasses like this, I mean, things could get underneath of them if it's at the right angle. But so let me explain this to you because this might make more sense. So when you use a shotgun and you're trying to shoot a bird, you use this ammunition called birdshot, which is not what a person would think of as a classic bullet, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's this casing that's plastic. It's pretty big and it's filled with little tiny BBs inside of it. So when you shoot from a distance, they disperse, which would make it easier to shoot a moving target like that. These little tiny BBs disperse everywhere depending on how far away you're standing. So she didn't get shot because the articles are all saying a bullet. It's not a bullet. It's essentially like she got shot with a BB or a few of them from this birdshot because it seems as if she has one embedded behind her eye, but they were able to get one out possibly. So when you look at x-ray imaging from a person that got shot with birdshot, depending on how far away they were standing, you could see like hundreds of little tiny BBs in their body dispersed throughout their body just depending on how far away they were. But this person was clearly far away enough, or she wasn't in the direct angle of all of them coming out, that she only got hit with 2 of them, because these cartridges are usually filled with lots of different little BBs. So she didn't get a direct hit by it basically. But the thing is when you look at the entry point of one of them, it is right under her eye. Like if it just was a few inches above it, she could have really lost her eye and possibly even worse. So she's really lucky that she survived, and she's lucky that she's not blind right now.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy because she was saying that she's able to see totally okay right now, but I guess there's still fragments left in her face, but those are too risky to operate on because it could affect her vision.
Because she's saying that it's behind her eye, and the optic nerve that comes off of your brain that innervates your eye and helps you see is right there, and they're probably scared to go too close and fiddle around with it, because right now they're just going to keep an eye on it and say if it's not affecting her vision and it's not her body, I mean her body will probably have a reaction to it because it's a foreign material, and that could be a potential surgery down the road. But at this point they could just keep an eye on it. I mean, I did an autopsy once on someone who was shot in Vietnam, and they were an old man that had a bullet in his hip still from when he got shot. People have them in their body all the time. As long as it's sitting there and not bothering anything, they'll just leave it alone.
Yeah.
Okay. Freak accidents.
All right, yesterday in Scottsdale, Arizona, this private jet owned by Motley Crue singer Vince Neil hit another plane on the runway when it landed, and now one person is dead. What is going on with all the aviation accidents?
I don't know. I think like obviously it's the same with everything. We're hearing a lot about it, but I feel like little planes always have issues. And like we just don't really even care about it. It's just like now it's on our radar because of the 2 really bad ones that just happened a couple weeks ago. But
well, really, since the beginning of the year, we didn't even really discuss these, but there was like major issues in South Korea and Russia, and then we had the one in DC, then we had the one in Philly. Now we have this. Also, we didn't even touch on a passenger plane with 10 people went missing in Alaska last week, and they just found the remnants of that. And also at the Seattle airport last week, two commercial airliners clipped each other's wings while taxiing.
I mean, I don't know. I still think especially because of that one that just happened in DC, you're seeing all this footage of what the air traffic controller was seeing at the time, like all of these planes that were arriving and leaving at the airport. And I look at that and I'm like, how are there not more accidents? There are so many planes out at one time. It's kind of amazing that they don't crash more often, to be honest with you.
I mean, even last night when I was driving home from your house and it's like darker out, you can see the planes more, obviously, because you could see their lights. But there was at least 3 or 4 that looked like they were about to land at the Philly airport.
Yeah, they all stand in a line. It's so crazy. Remember that day we were leaving Manhattan and driving back home towards Newark Airport?
And you almost crashed the car because you were like, this plane's so close to the highway.
The plane literally like skimmed the top of my car. That's how close it gets to the highway. But remember us looking just miles down the road and seeing them all lined up? Like it's crazy that you could see it better when it's dark out or dusk out. And it's just, when you think about the amount of flights that happen a day, it's really amazing that we could have a system that there's not more of this stuff happening. And I almost don't even count the little planes as much. I mean, I just feel like you hear it so much. It's more the commercial jetliner is the scary one, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely is. It seems like there was 2 pilots on this private plane. One of them died. Did they confirm whether or not he died as a result of the crash, or did he have a medical episode that caused the crash?
He was the person that was flying it.
He was one of the 2 pilots on the private plane.
I don't really know what they said, why it happened. I'm sure they don't even really know that at this point.
Yeah, so
they'll do an autopsy on him and they'll figure that out, because they'll be able to see if he had a stroke or some kind of a heart attack or something prior to crashing. So
yeah, and the singer for Motley Crue was not on the plane, but his girlfriend was, but
Thank
she
God.
survived. Dogs on the plane survived. Everybody always wants to know that, so it's all good there. All right, in Tampa, this little girl who just turned 7 was drag racing, which apparently is allowed for children and is a pretty big thing in this country. I didn't really know that, but she had a horrible accident on the raceway and she died.
I never heard of this, and I can't even believe this article is real.
Because
There's something
it's
called
children driving vehicles.
Junior drag racing with children 5 to 17 years old. Like, you're literally letting a 5-year-old drive a fucking car, and you're wondering how they died in an accident.
They justified that they only go 40 miles an hour.
40 miles an hour is fast. For a little
kid.
body. Yes. They shouldn't even be in the front seat at that age. This kid was in 1st grade. The kid's not even really 7. She just turned 7 3 days ago. So she's like an old 6-year-old, 1st grader. And you're telling me that this is okay to just put this kid in the front of a car to drive? It's just so weird. It should be child abuse, honestly.
I think it's weird because people interviewed for this article were just like, oh, it's just entry-level racing, and they have all the same equipment as the big boys, including a helmet, gloves, seatbelts.
Yeah, it worked really well.
But
good job.
Children, they're not adults, so if they do get in a crash or something, do you think they have the mindset yet to be like, oh, I know what to do to get out of this?
No, it's not even that. They just their bones aren't even hardened all the way yet. Like, it's just a ridiculous thing to even think of. And their weight is that's why they're not supposed to be in the front seat of the car. They're not. It's not because of just their age. It's because of their weight. It's so. And she hit an adult too. Luckily, that guy survived. But like, I really can't wrap my brain around this. It has to be this exclusive American dumb bullshit that people do as a tradition. It's so outrageous. I think they should be in trouble for child abuse for letting a kid do this, honestly.
Yeah, because, I think they're trying to argue that it's, like, relatively safe in a controlled environment, but, like, I don't really see a kid driving. It's not like they're driving a full-size car, but they're driving a vehicle that goes 40 miles an hour, and that's fast for not necessarily us driving on a regulated roadway, but for a little kid on a racetrack, that's really fast. And clearly an accident has happened, so they need to look into that and prevent it, or just I agree with you. I don't think this should even exist for kids that
If
young.
you're a parent of this child, you don't feel a little responsible for allowing this to happen. It's just I feel like this is a fake article.
Well, it's
kinda
not fake.
weird.
This is a very real organization, so if people are clearly, I mean, it makes sense that this is happening in Florida, but it really also seems like it's happening all over the country. So I'm curious if anybody has experience with this, because it seems like there's been multiple lawsuits at this venue for spectators getting hit with flying parts from the races, but I don't know if they've per se had a death of somebody so young there before.
I just think, like, if your kids want to do outrageous shit, like, I understand in the article they're like, she died doing what she loved, and it's like, yeah, my kid wants to go to the mall by herself. I'm not letting my little kid go to the mall by herself. Like, if something happens, that's directly my fault for letting her do something that's not age appropriate, you know?
Yeah.
Or in the whatever. I'm not going to ever agree with it.
All right. In Australia, a woman was in her backyard when suddenly lightning struck her tree, causing the tree to explode, and then she got hit with wood shrapnel and died.
Yeah, so she was sitting back there apparently with her friend. They were about 19 feet away from this large tree, and it impaled her somewhere and killed her on the spot. Her friend had one of her fingers partially amputated and also fractured her jaw, but the friend is still alive, although she's still in the hospital in serious condition. It is kind of crazy because usually when you think about lightning strikes, you think about people getting electrocuted. And in this case, it was from blunt trauma due to shrapnel basically flying through the air.
Well, another thing is they could, like, lightning strikes could also cause fires too. Like, they could set, is that
Yeah.
correct? Like, they could
Yeah,
set houses on
totally.
fire and stuff. Yeah, it just sucks because it's like, a severe thunderstorm, those happen all the time. People get warnings for them all the time. I don't think you think you're just going to be in your backyard hanging out and then this crazy thing is going to happen to you.
Well, the kids always call me a Karen all the time because as soon as it starts looking angry outside, I'm like, get out of the pool. And they're like, it's been raining yet. It's not even lightning. I didn't even hear thunder. And I'm like, I don't care. We're not risking it. Just it's just like, why? Okay, I might be a Karen. I don't let my kids drive a car going 40 miles an hour, and I don't let them in the pool during a thunderstorm. But
Well, I was thinking of when Nicole and Bill were over your house last summer and we were all hanging out in the backyard, and it started like, you could see lightning in the distance and it was thundering a little bit. It didn't seem that bad. What was that, the night of the All-Star game for MLB? I think it was some
I don't
baseball game
remember,
was
but
on.
that was the night that the next door neighbor's tree fell and like totally crushed her shed right near where we were sitting.
Yes.
Right?
So it starts picking up and we're like, all right, we should probably go home now because it seemed like it was going to be raining like that all night. Ricky and
But
I.
you live 10 minutes away. Nicole and Bill live in New York on Long Island.
Didn't they go back to their hotel in Philly?
No.
I thought they went back to their
No, they
hotel
were
that
going
night.
back home because she had work the next day.
Yeah, well, the 10-minute drive from my house was like post-apocalyptic lightning and thunder. And then, thank God, like right when I turned into my neighborhood, the rain started, but it was totally blinding, the rain. So we all know I have extreme weather anxiety. So
Oh my God, we make fun of Maria so bad. There's like this little storage closet thing in her basement, and we're always like, are you hiding in that? Because you'll get an alert that says, okay, there's a tornado watch or a tornado warning. And
because tornadoes do touch down near my house. They don't touch near your house. There's a lot of
your
farms
house
near
has
my
been there
house.
since 1950 at least. You'll be fine.
Yeah, but my neighbor down the street told me one went down the other street only like 10 years ago. So I don't really like that. This episode is brought to you by The Gross Room.
Guys, this week we finished up our high-profile death dissection on the Karen Reed trial, and it's really good, actually. I'm going to be honest with you. Maria will say the same thing, that we really didn't pick up too much attention about it. I know we talked about it once on this show when she had the hung jury and was going to get a retrial, but we weren't really into it. And once we really dug deep into it, it was really, really good. And there's something shady going on there. So I think that you should read our post. I go through the whole autopsy and talk about what the prosecution said, what the defense said, and even the comments as of this morning are just great as far as you could really see the split. Like, are you team prosecution or are you team defense? And it's really good environment for us to talk about things. So it's for like-minded people that are into all of this morbid kind of stuff, but also want to learn about it. So it's just a really cool place to be.
Yeah, and I think you brought up some really, really interesting points from looking at the autopsy that we haven't heard elsewhere. So you guys are definitely going to head over to the gross room and check that out, because we're not going to just spill all the tea on here. But yeah, we got into some really good points, and that was definitely a difficult one to write up because there's just so much going on. But we have it all broken down for you, so you could head over to thegrossroom.com for more info and to sign up for only $5.99 for the month.
Okay, true crime.
All right, so the newest season of The Kardashians premiered last week, which nobody's really watching, but I guess they're putting this article out to get some people interested in. But Kim was talking to Chris about how the Ryan Murphy series Monsters was going to be covering the Menendez brothers case, and she went on to tell the kids that Erik Menendez used to come over the house sometimes and play tennis with Robert Kardashian in the 80s.
Do you think that that is fucking bizarre?
Yeah, because he was a teenager.
Yeah, I looked this up to see exactly how old these people were. So Rob Kardashian, for those of you who don't know, he's the dad of all of these Kardashians, but also he was the defense attorney for O.J. Simpson, which is how he got in pop culture. His name got in there. And he's been dead for a while. But in the so he was literally born almost around the same exact time Pop Pop was. So think about that.
Yeah.
In the 1980s, he was around 40 years old, and his oldest child at the time, Courtney, was born the same year as me, 1979. So she would have been in between 0 and 10 years old, right? So Erik Menendez, however, was between 10 and 19 years old. So it's not like he was going over there because he was friends with one of his kids, because Courtney was too young. And the weirdest part is that Chris, the mom, said that they didn't know the parents. So I'm like, so you were playing tennis at 40 some years old with a kid that was under 18 years old? It's kind of weird.
Yeah, because even if they had the same tennis instructor and he was bringing him over there, it's just kind of bizarre. But I'm also like, is this just what rich people fucking do? Like, they just are like, oh, my tennis instructor's going to just bring this child over? Because if you're familiar with the case,
She
Erik
didn't
Menendez
say nothing
was
about
like,
an instructor, though. She said he used to come over and play tennis. Maybe there was or whatever, but the whole thing to me is just, like, I think about this and I'm like, okay, Gabe's in his 40s. Like, if there was some teenage boy coming over here to, like, play sports with him, I would just think it was very unusual, especially because we weren't friends with the family. Just is fucking weird.
it is. It's like that was definitely the first thing that crossed my mind, because we have, this case has been huge in the news because of this show that came out,
And
and
that
we
kid
covered it before.
That kid supposes had a history of sexual assault from the father and shit, right?
Yeah,
From
that's
his
what
father.
they said in court.
Yeah, so just, I don't know, the whole thing of it, I mean, like, listen, you're exactly right. Nobody's really watching the show as much anymore, and they do this. Oh, like, let me play dumb. Did you know that he used to come over here and play tennis with your dad? Like they didn't prior discuss that or whatever, but whatever. I just think it's weird. But maybe that is what rich people do. I don't know. It's just it's unusual.
I do think it's weird because you hear these stories and, like, these people, especially in Beverly Hills and LA, are just so interlocked with each other, and it's so bizarre. And you're just like, is that just a normal thing that happens, that even, like, let's say they met at the club playing tennis, like, oh, just come over to my house and play? Well, it's inappropriate, because I don't remember exactly how old he was when the parents died, but
It was 1989. That's what I was going to say. Like,
he was a teenager when
this
it
is
happened,
the craziest shit too. Then you're thinking about, yeah, he was 19. When you think about it is really nuts to think about the most high-profile cases in the country. You think about the O.J. Simpson trial, and then you think about the Menendez brothers, right? How that Rob Kardashian was friends, whatever the hell was happening there, with a kid that later got convicted of a huge crime before, or no, that was
No, so
before. The
yeah.
Menendez was before, right? So wasn't there something though that these two cases kind of interlocked, that they decided to do nothing with, or they were showing an example with one of them because of the other one?
Yes. So the Menendez brothers, the parents were killed, I believe, in 89. They had their first trial, which, like Karen Reed, ended up being a mistrial. And then in between the second trial,
Oh, that's when the OJ one happened, yeah.
OJ happened and got acquitted. So their theory is that the prosecution doubled down on the boys because they needed a win, because losing the OJ case was such a big deal. So that's why they went after them so hard, and then they weren't allowing the sexual abuse evidence in the second trial. And it was just this major problem, and they like made an example of them because in between their first and second trial, OJ had been acquitted. But that is interesting.
So this all happened in this same circle of friends. Like, these are terrible fucking people, all of them. Could you imagine knowing, if you could count on one hand, like all of the major ones, it's just like you so happen to have these people in your circle of friends, all of them. It's just weird.
Well, it is weird, and that's what I was kind of saying earlier is weird with Luigi and Diddy being in the same jail and then their defense attorneys being married to each other. It's just kind of unusual, don't you think?
Yeah.
That it just so happens this attorney power couple got the two biggest cases of 2024.
I don't know, dude.
I just think it's weird, but I don't know if this is just how rich people act, because this particular like Menendez brothers OJ crossover, it's so ingrained in pop culture, even just down to like Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. I mean, Kyle Richards has talked about like hanging out with Chris and Nicole back in the 90s. And I was just reading Paris Hilton's memoir, and she brings stuff up like this, and you're just like, it's unbelievable how all these people know each other and are intertwined in each other's lives.
It is. I mean, I guess it's in theory, it's a smaller community of people. But just think about knowing multiple people firsthand that were on your inner circle that are accused of this horrible stuff of like raping children and killing people, murdering their wife, slicing her throat. Like, it's just killing parents while they're eating ice cream. It's just like,
well, wasn't there
listen, I'm pro Menendez brothers. I think I'm saying like their parents are terrible people, but
wasn't there something though that Robert Kardashian wasn't typically like a criminal defense attorney, but he hopped on the OJ trial because they were friends? Because that would make sense why he wouldn't help Erik Menendez out if he wasn't traditionally a defense attorney.
Yeah, I don't really remember.
I don't know. I'll have to look into that, but I just do think it's crazy.
Or like he felt terribly guilty because he got a guilty person off free and didn't want to get involved with another case.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, these trials were going on the year I was born, right? So, like, it's kind of crazy that pop culturally this was happening. And this is kind of, I feel like, what really birthed the true crime movement that we deal with today, because they were so sensationalized and they allowed the cameras in the courtroom.
Oh, yeah, sure. OJ definitely was. I specifically remember I was probably... It was right when you were born, so I was like 16 probably. I'd say 15, 16 years old when that started happening, and that was when my obsession with true crime began.
Yeah. All right. This one is insane. So in Boston, this lawyer who was 65 years old, he hadn't been heard from for a few days, so his friends and families asked the police to do a welfare check on him. So it seems like he had a houseboat in the Boston Marina. Police get there and they come across this 24-year-old woman on the boat. So at first she gave them a fake name. She said she hadn't seen the lawyer in a couple days. She was trying to stop them from coming inside, but obviously that's suspicious behavior. So they're like, no, we're still going to go in and check. So they go in, they find this guy's body wrapped in a tarp and duct tape. There's blood everywhere, which she seriously said was from her period. And then there's, they're on this boat, so there's weights attached to him. She was clearly planning on dumping him over the side of the boat, like
they came
mob
like 5
style.
minutes before she was ready to like ditch him over the side of the boat.
Yeah, and the weirdest part of this was her pink acrylic fingernails were stuck in the dead guy's chest.
I'm kind of wondering, like what went down there, because that's very interesting as far as like a wound pattern goes. Was he trying to hurt her and she was trying to protect herself, or I don't understand why she would dig her fingernails into his body so deep until they broke. Because think about, like, as a person that has fake nails, if I did that to somebody, it would really, really hurt, right?
Well, do you
So
think
I'm
it
not
could
going to do
be-
it unless I'm like trying to protect my life or something, I would feel.
Do you think it could be those ones you put on the girls, though, that you just put on in your house with glue, not the ones that you have to like sit at the nail salon and get
Yeah,
done?
I mean, it's totally possible, but even ones that are glued would still hurt. Like, why you would, I just don't know why why a person would dig their hands into someone so hard if, I'm not sure. They don't even say how the guy died, so I don't know anything about it. So I am curious to know more about that, though, because it's interesting and it's not something that you see very commonly for an assailant to do to somebody. So I'm interested on what the take of that is. But the blood from the period, it's just like, girl, it's 2025. You don't watch true crime shows. Like, they're going to be able to tell real quick that not only is it period blood, but it's also your blood.
But like a period, like your period cannot produce as much blood as they're explaining.
I don't
as
know.
on the
Back
scene.
in my day, I used to be able to have, I had quite the heavy flow.
Well, that's you. So they also found a dead dog floating in the water nearby, which is really suspicious.
Well, she had a dog with her that was live, and then there was a dead dog too, which is weird and also fucked up. I bet you whatever happened, she probably, especially because she had tied weights to his body, like, you can't just easily move a man like that, especially when they're dead. It's very hard to move dead weight.
No.
And so she probably couldn't move it herself or something. I don't know.
The whole scene is just weird. The fingernails obviously are the weirdest part.
How old was she?
She was 24.
So, and he was 65?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was weird because it seemed like she had her shit together. They said she was a graduate of University of Maryland. She was a former ballerina. She claimed to be an entrepreneur and a farmer. So it seemed like she had her shit together. So what exactly went down? I think the whole scene's weird. She's been charged with murder. She pleaded not guilty. I don't think her lying and then saying the blood was her period is going to help her case, but it's definitely one of the more unusual ones.
I wish they would update us. Like, remember that story we had last week about the torso that was found in the suitcase? It's like, just nothing else about that. You know, like, don't tell us this news without giving us the final story, because we want to know more about it.
Exactly.
Okay. Medical news.
All right. So a renowned anal surgeon has recently gone on a podcast to discuss how we wipe ourselves and his thoughts. So do you want to explain his theories?
So he's saying that the anus, if you look at it, it looks like a folded up accordion, and that's why it's supposed to open up really wide and it's supposed to close. So that's why there's all of these skin folds there. And he's saying that wiping it, and everybody could agree with this, that wiping it, you could be a little bit too hard and you could get sore and then you could get infections and all of that kind of stuff. But his solution is saying, I'm a huge bidet fan. Okay, people would probably be okay with that. I know they sell toilet seats now that do it, but nobody has them anywhere you go to the bathroom, especially if you're out in public. And then on top of that, it's like, oh, well, he said, use the bidet, but if you can't do that, just hop in the shower real quick. Like, okay, I really want to hop in the shower after I take a shit. Like, come on, who wants to do that?
It's just not practical.
It's
to hop in the shower every time you poop.
So then he's saying, okay, so I'm a big fan of the wipes. Apparently they're terrible for your hole too. He's saying that it could ruin the microbiome of your anus. So you have good bacteria and bad bacteria, and it could ruin that balance, which does make sense. But you could he says that he sees a lot of patients that are having issues from using the wet wipes. So he's like, so not another impractical solution is, he's like, if you do have to wipe with toilet paper, then he prefers that you do it standing and squatting because it has less blood flow to the area if you're standing versus being bent in half, right? And which less pressure, less chance of blood flow going and a wound, etc. But like, could you just imagine like squatting over the toilet and standing up and wipe it? Like, it's just, and he says not to wipe either. You shouldn't wipe. You should just blot.
It's just not practical. I'm sorry.
It really isn't. Like, I understand there's all these things that you're supposed to be doing and stuff, but you're just like, okay, come on. That's outrageous to me.
I guess bidets are more accessible now because they have those newer ones that you could just like hook on your toilet seat, but I never even saw one until I was 10 years old, and it's because when my aunt and uncle were getting married, we stayed at my aunt's parents' house, and they're like hardcore from Italy Italians, and in their bathroom they had one, and I was like, what is this weird contraption? I never even heard of it before.
I used one for the first time. I think I told you this already when we just went to some Airbnb on our last trip over New Year's time. There was one and I was like, oh, let me try this. And it was kind of like a weird feeling, but it was cool. I still think you need to use toilet paper there though to like dry it up, right?
Well, he's saying if you do use a bidet, you have to make sure the area is dry afterwards. So
Yeah,
when you have...
because then you're gonna have like drippy shit water in your underwear. Like,
Okay, so you still either need toilet paper or you need a
But
towel, and you're
blot.
still wiping.
But
Oh, you're
blot.
blotting. Sorry.
Yeah. What are you gonna use? Like somebody's hand towel in their hanging in their bathroom?
The thing is, I do think
I might
people
get one.
would
I
do
might
that.
get one of those things for my toilet. Actually,
What, the bidet?
yeah.
Well, get one and report back and tell us how your butthole accordion's changing
If
over
there's
time.
if there's any bidet companies that would like to sponsor this program because of the research that I'm going to be doing on this subject, feel free to contact us.
Okay. In Thailand, paramedics rushed to the home of this 36-year-old woman who said she was having difficulty breathing. Despite the difficulty breathing, though, when they found her, she was face down on her bed drinking, I'm going to say, is like bubble tea out of a bowl.
Slurping a bowl of sugary milk.
So they determined that she needs to go to the hospital, but the problem here is that she weighed over 600 pounds, so they had to cut down her bedroom wall, remove a door from the home, and then take her inside of her bed on a tow truck to the hospital because they could not get her there otherwise.
You're not going to believe this, but a similar situation happened to one of Gabe's coworkers.
No way.
No, I'm serious because as soon as I read this story, I was like, I thought it was with Gabe. I'm like, I've heard this story before. So then he texted the fireman who's no longer working there anymore to get the story. But a similar thing happened that they showed up and a person was 700 pounds. 700. They had to take the person out of some second story window and put them in a front end loader, which I was like, what the hell's a front end loader? And he said it's basically the same as a bulldozer.
Oh my God.
I know. I'm like, I've heard this before. It's like, listen, to see a human being put on a tow truck or a freaking bulldozer and brought to the hospital is so dehumanizing, right? But like, what else can you do?
Did you also notice in the photo that her foot was like purple?
Yeah, you think she's having a little bit of a circulatory problem? Like all of that weight compressing on your vascular system, it's terrible for you. I mean, that's what's happening. It's the same thing that happens if you have a giant tumor up in your groin area that's compressing your blood vessels there. It's that your foot is not going to get the same blood flow as it normally does because it's blocking it off because of all that heavy weight.
Yeah. So they brought her to the hospital in the tow truck, but of course, there was obstacles getting her in there too, because when at the house, 20 people had to lift her into the tow truck because it's not like a car where you can just strap a chain on it. You know what I mean? This is a human. So when they get to the hospital, they had a whole other set of obstacles getting her inside of it. And then the doctor had ordered her to stop eating immediately because I guess even though she was having these issues, she just didn't stop.
Well, I mean, clearly she has some kind of a medical issue because this just isn't normal by any stretch of the imagination, and no person would ever choose to actually live like this. it's not as simple as just being like, oh, stop eating. Like, duh, I think that she already knows that. So she needs some intensive therapy and try to figure out surgery, medications, whatever. It's so sad because she's only 36 years old. And, I've had situations like this working in the hospital too, because the hospital's only, and it's the same with the ambulance and everything. The whole world is set up for average sized people. And now in hospitals, this is something that you might not notice, but just look around next time you go to a doctor's office or something. They have these extra wide waiting room chairs now. The hospital beds come wider now. Like they're definitely improving for what they would call bariatric patients. But for example, the morgue that I used to work in was very, very old, and it was before obesity was really a thing when it was built. And it was made for a standard size gurney to fit through the openings to get back to the autopsy table. And I had a situation once that I had to actually cut a person that was super morbidly obese, so over 500 pounds, in the refrigerator on the specialized gurney that they had, because I couldn't fit him through the doorway to bring him on the autopsy table. And even if I could, he wouldn't have fit on our autopsy table. I mean, it's so incredibly sad in that situation that a person has to live like this, because clearly they feel like shit about that. You know what I mean?
Do you think at the hospital you worked at that they at some point will have to move, like build a new facility or renovate that space to make it
I mean, I
wider?
guess when they update it, I don't see that them doing it. We had it happen a couple times, but sometimes we couldn't fit them in the autopsy room, but we were able to fit them in the cutting room and just do it in there. I mean, to do an autopsy in the refrigerator is not ideal, especially for a person like me, because I have Raynaud's, so I'm very sensitive to the cold, and my hands like stop working when they're too cold. So it was difficult for me to do the autopsy like that, especially because it was a very strenuous one because of the guy's weight. But it's not typical. Most people, I mean, for someone to weigh 600 pounds is just not typical, like this
Yeah.
situation. And but when I started working at the next hospital I went to, which was a newer build of a hospital, they had definitely taken all these things into consideration, that you would be able to, the doorways were way wider. There was just a lot easier to get in and out of because of the challenges that we're facing as more and more people become obese.
Yeah. Okay, back in 2017, this woman driving along Route 78 in New Jersey pulled over when she started feeling a medical emergency. So this state trooper found her about 30 minutes later, and he thought she was driving under the influence because when he approached her in the car, she was covered in vomit and couldn't answer basic yes or no questions. So, because he thought she was under the influence, he took her back to the station where she sat for about 2 hours until they realized she was really having a stroke, and then finally got her the medical attention she needed.
So she's sued the police department now. Her mother actually has, and they've been awarded what, $12.9 million.
Well, so originally they were awarded way more than that, like into $20 million, but they said due to a pre-existing due to a pre-existing medical condition, it was reduced by 40%, bringing the total to $12.9 million.
So when I read this, I felt really terrible for the whole situation, because I personally, I could go back and forth with this with the police officer. For example, if you're a cop and you pull people over for a living, and I mean, assuming there could be medical situations for sure, but you pull up and see a woman who's vomited all over herself and is disoriented and could definitely seem like she was high on some kind of drugs. I cuz like they can't do a breathalyzer test. It would be negative if she wasn't drinking alcohol, but she could definitely be high on drugs. I just think, okay, how is this guy, he's not a doctor, like how is this guy supposed to know that she's having a stroke? The family argues that she was wearing business attire, she was in a clean car, she had no history of anything. They didn't find anything that was unusual in the car. Like all of those things together should have maybe, and the only thing I could think is that maybe in those situations when anyone is super inebriated or something, maybe they're supposed to call for medical assistance, and maybe he didn't do that when he was supposed to.
Because let's say she was intoxicated and didn't have the medical episode. What if she was in danger of having like alcohol poisoning or something worse, or an overdose? Because
I don't know. Like, that's
they're
what I'm
saying
saying. Is it protocol? I mean, this is, cops could answer this, who are listening. If someone gets pulled over and because there's people that are drunk all the time that you just want to bring back to the station and be like, you need to sober up and do whatever here. But she was clearly like not talking right and also had vomit all over herself. So you're like, okay, she's a little bit more. Is it just protocol to say, let's just get her checked out just to be sure or not? Because that's the only thing I could think here, how they could really get him for this, because I just don't.
Well, they proved in their lawsuit that the significant delay in her treatment resulted in brain damage and permanent disability. So I guess they were able to prove at some point that he didn't do something right, because, I mean, the state is still arguing that he acted in accordance to their training, but something had to be deeper than that if they awarded her so much money.
So there's a thing that comes to stroke victims, which is called FAST, the acronym FAST, which stands for, the F is for face or drooping arm. The A is for the drooping arm. S is for speech difficulty. And T is for time. Okay? Time to call 911. So a lot of those things, like, I'll give you an example. I used to be friends with some guy that worked at the ME's office, and he was at work one day, and he was young. He was like in his 50s. And he started talking to one of his coworkers, and all of a sudden, like, half of his face started like not moving while he was talking. And that coworker immediately, of course, it wasn't one of the physicians that worked there, but someone that works in the semi-medical field, was just like, dude, something's wrong with your face. You better go get that checked out. And sure enough, he was in the middle of having a stroke. It's really important if people notice that when they see somebody talking, because oftentimes the person that it's happening to doesn't realize that it's happening. So my whole thing, though, is that in a police situation where they're pulling people over because people drink and do drugs all the time and drive, how is he, not medically trained, supposed to know the difference between someone who's wasted versus someone who's having a medical emergency?
Yeah, I just think this couldn't have been like a simple mistake.
I mean, I understand that the delay in her care resulted in her having permanent injuries. I personally feel like, unless I'm just missing, because I did actually read some of the court dockets, and I saw that, they were saying they were basically blowing her off as being really high, and they had pushed her into the car. She fell, she couldn't walk, so she had all these bruises on her legs. But I really don't believe that the officer thought that she was high. He didn't think. He probably feels terrible that he missed this, honestly.
I think you and I are missing crucial information from this court case, because I don't think it was so simply like, you're getting all this money. Because that just would not happen. That she would be getting this much money. And this has been going on since 2019. Like, it's just not that cut and dry. So, like, I'm sure they proved in some type of way that protocol wasn't followed or something. Like, I just can't see it being like because truly this could be such an innocent mistake. So, like, they had to have pushed something further with the evidence to show something else happened for her to get awarded this amount of money.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know what their training is as far as that, because I mean, it is definitely possible that a person could be having all sorts of types of medical emergencies that maybe they are trained in a certain way to look for certain signs, like this is how people act when they're high, this is this. I don't know. It's and really the solution is just to have EMS come check them out anyway, and they would have probably realized it right away. It's just a terrible situation, because it just, I don't know, like, I feel bad for everyone involved, because you being a police officer and stuff, you, in theory, you go for the job because you want to help people, and like you would feel horrible if you know that you could have helped this lady and she wouldn't have been disabled for the rest of her life, you know?
Mm-hmm. All right, no other death news, so we're just going to hop into questions of the day. Every Friday on the @MotherKnowsDeath Instagram account, we put a story up with a question box, and you guys can ask whatever you want. First, do your little children ever see the graphic pics, or do they have morbid questions about death?
I mean, yeah, they always see the pics because I'm sitting at my desk a lot and I'm writing for the gross room, and then they'll come over and be like, "What is that?" I'm trying to think of which one I just posted the other day that they saw. Usually if I'm doing anything that has pictures of like genitals especially, I always just am extra cautious to minimize it, and I'll go into the kitchen to cook dinner or something. I don't leave it on my computer because my kids go on my computer sometimes, so I try to be conscious of that. But I have like 80,000 photos on my phone, and my kids grab my phone all the time for whatever, to show me some stupid YouTube video or whatever. And so they see stuff, I'm sure. I mean, it is what it is, and they just say like, "What is that?" And I explain it to them. And
But do they ask you like questions about death and stuff too?
They ask me questions about certain things, like if they see somebody at their school or something that's got something wrong with them, they ask me about that. And they don't seem to be too concerned with death. There was a period where Lillian was a couple years ago, and I just was like, "Yeah, you're gonna die." I don't know if that like just clicked in her head and she just stopped obsessing over it. Because remember, she would cry and be like, "I'm just scared I'm gonna die." And I was like, "You are. So am I, and so is everyone. So is your cat. Like, move on. This is the kind of mom you have. I'm sorry. I'm not like a coddler."
We know. All right. What kind of shoes do you use during an autopsy?
So I used to have, when I was at my job, when I was doing a lot of autopsies, like almost every day or multiple times a week, I used to keep a pair of galoshes, like rain boots there, that I would put on when I did an autopsy, because sometimes, especially if you have patients that have hepatitis C or something, they're really, really juicy. So when you cut them open, they're filled with fluid in their abdomen and their chest, and it's just a lot of fluid can pour. And especially, like I was saying, my autopsy table was so small, it was made for average sized people. So if you put a person on that table that was obese and you opened up their abdomen, the fluid just poured onto the floor because the table wasn't wide enough on the sides to catch it. And I had multiple situations where my socks would get wet with like hep C positive fluid or something, even wearing those stupid covers. There was a point where we would get from the GYN floor, you'll think this is funny, they have these like booties that go up to your knees basically to catch babies and all that fluid that's coming out. But we always, when people are dead, the insurance doesn't pay for anything anymore. So our supplies were just always scant. And if I could get them from the maternity floor or something, that would be fine. But the alternative was like, I just kept a pair of rain boots there that stayed in the morgue all the time. I put them on when I did the autopsy and took them off, and then that was the solution.
All right. Any Valentine's Day plans or traditions that you have?
Well, it's the Eagles parade, right?
I understand it's the best day this week, but it's dick to all the women that are supportive and don't care about football.
Which is like many of them.
Well, Valentine's Day is pretty controversial because everybody just is like so over it and everything. Personally, aesthetically, it's one of my favorite holidays because I really like heart-shaped things.
Me too, and so pink and red.
Pink and red, and I liked like scallop trim, all the fun, cute, dainty stuff. I feel like every year we usually like have a nice dinner, and we always watch this really funny Netflix special with Michael Bolton. It's like some special Valentine's Day thing, but it's so weird and it's really funny, and like a bunch of comedians are in it, and we definitely watch that every year. But otherwise it's just like whatever. We just have dinner and like a fancy dessert. Like a meal I normally wouldn't cook that's something elaborate, but I guess I'm getting screwed out of that this weekend. So.
I know. Gabe might go too. I don't know. I keep sending him these videos from Instagram of all the dumb shit that's been going on this week with like people pulling the light out of, you know, it's the traffic lights. Like the people in our city pulled the traffic lights out of the ground. People are jumping. So I just saw someone laying on top of a septic train.
Oh, I did see that because I was like, that is so stupid.
I'm like,
you're
you
just
want to be
asking.
around these people? Like, what is attractive about this? I don't understand.
No, the parade is really. I went to the first parade and it was really scaled back compared to like the initial win victory. Because it's during the day, it's in the morning, people aren't that drunk yet.
Does it go up Broad Street? Like, where does it go?
I think they start at the stadium and they go like they're on a bus where like everybody's outside, like on top of the bus so you could see them. And the bus goes from the stadium to the art museum, and then they do a speech at the art museum, and then it's over.
Oh, okay.
So
well,
it
whatever.
goes up
So
there.
that's during the day. So we were gonna go over my mom and pop-ups, but I'm not driving anywhere near Pennsylvania. Sorry, Mom. But yeah, for us, so the girls and I for a while, for like 5 years, we make Gabe these like really fancy chocolate covered strawberries. It's just a tradition that we've been doing every Valentine's Day. And he gets us flowers and I'll cook dinner and that's it. It's nothing. He'll get me flowers. Like I love getting flowers. I have so many of them. I save every flower he ever gives me. So I have like 50 bouquets of flowers around my house.
Yeah.
So I
Ricky
just look forward to that.
Ricky will usually get me a little gift. I will say, since we're married, the gifts are
Dwindling, right?
dwindling.
Wait, I'm gonna send you this meme that I found on Instagram that I keep sending to Gabe. It's just like, oh, so like you don't ask me to be your Valentine anymore because we're married. I guess it's like all these like zingers. It is true though. It's just like, oh, now that you have it, it's like whatever. I'll just get you some flowers and that's it. But he did get me that box of chocolate from Vegan Treats, which I ate in one day.
Oh yeah, he did get. He gets me like flowers and candy and stuff. But like one year, I got like a weighted blanket, a fancy anthro candle, a heating pad. It was really nice.
Now he's like, "Fuck you!" Like
he's like,
"I
don't
got
bother
you.
me.
I'm done." Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, he's. You know, they try their best, but you could definitely see the difference, the shift from dating and wanting to lock you down to then they're like, whatever, I don't care anymore.
It's absolutely true.
All right, guys. So thank you so much. If you have a story, please submit it to stories@motherknowsdeath.com or send us a message at the @motherknowsdeath Instagram account.
Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on Amazon or
Not Amazon.
Spotify.
She is the worst with this. Please leave us a 5-star review, preferably written on Apple, or a 5-star review on Spotify, or subscribe to our YouTube channel.
See you guys. Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.